Okay, now it's working. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is like, it has been a nightmare trying to get this started. Okay, so let me just make sure everybody can hear me. Okay, so, okay, now it's okay. So, anyway, Married at First Sight, season 17. It's kind of weird. Um, I think the couples on this season, there's a lot there's a lot to talk about. But today I just want to talk about Orion and Lauren because if you watched last night's episode, there was a huge controversy over her racially insensitive comments. And I want to talk about this from like my perspective as a Black woman and as someone who is in an interracial marriage. Like my husband is white. And I just want to like give my armchair diagnosis. You guys know I love doing my armchair diagnoses. Okay, so here, let me give you an overview of what happened, and then I'm going to play the audio for you guys. So Orion is a Native American, First Nations male. He's 27. And Lauren is 31 and she's Black, and they're both from Colorado, and they were matched together. And on the surface, things looked pretty good. You guys know how I feel about age gap relationships. I don't think that women should be pursuing men who are 5 years younger than them. I think that unless this person is extremely mature, it's really hard. There's like a imbalance, a power imbalance, and men can sometimes feel their egos, a little undermined. The other thing that's interesting about this couple is that Lauren, is self-sufficient, self-sustaining, and Orion lives with his mother and sister still. And that's, they have this conversation earlier, but to me, I'm like already seeing like these little kind of like tiny imbalances in their lifestyles where he could feel inferior. And that's what I think this whole thing is about, you guys. I agree that what she said was, and how she responded was a little weird, a little racially insensitive, but I also think that I think that there's something deeper going on with his ego. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that she's in a different place that he is in life. And, he's not ready to take care of a family yet. Right now, before I play this, let me say something about Black women and what our community typically um, thinks about Black women dating out. Like, this is a stereotypical response. Whenever Black women talk about dating out, the first thing that people say is like, oh, white men are going to fetishize you. Non-Black men are going to fetishize you. The other thing they say is, oh, they're going to call you the N-word. Right. And so I think the reason why Lauren asked this question, which I'm going to play right now, is because people have been in her ear about that. And that is sort of something that is used in the Black community to keep Black women from dating out. They say, oh my gosh, these people are going to, these men, they're just going to fetishize you. They have jungle fever. They're racist. They don't like you. And so you kind of have this like weird belief sometimes that if I date out, it's going to be someone who's racist, right? So let me play for you guys this. Oh, one moment. It's in my headphones, so let me just play it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was definitely, an ignorant kid.
Hold on one second.
Do you use the N-word?
No.
Have you ever?
I have.
Yeah, like in your younger years?
Ignorantly, and singing along with songs.
Can I punch you for my ancestors?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you.
So she asked him, do you and have you ever used the N-word? Right. And he's like, I have. And I used it, when I was younger, colloquially, if you were in the United States, people say that. It's unfortunate. It's sad. It's in music, but people use the N-word as like, homie, what's up, friend, guy, girl, whatever. And non-Black people do. But that's our fault because we give them permission. We do. We give them permission. Unpopular opinion. I don't care what you think. We give them permission to use the N-word. We'll be like, oh, it's okay. He's my friend. He can say it. She can say it. So I don't feel no kind of bad. So she jokingly says, okay, I'm going to punch you for my ancestors. She gives him this like playful punch for using the N-word. And, and he's like, I was younger in songs, etc. So her response, I thought, was very measured. And you guys, I honestly don't know how to feel about that because I think if you're I'm in the Bay Area, California, and a lot of people, it's stupid, it's ignorant, but they use the N word. That's just how people talk out here. Do I think it's acceptable? No, I don't think anybody, including Black people, should be using that word. But I think Lauren, feels the same way a lot of Black people do, which is okay, you used it when you were younger, you realized that it was ignorant, and now you've changed. Okay, let's listen again.
You can probably do that a lot.
We're good now.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was definitely, an ignorant kid, not knowing stuff. And I've had, some of my own community, talk to me, mostly my mom, who's just like, hey, don't joke about that. And so it was really just a big learning process growing up.
Well, I think that is okay because I've used terms that when I was younger that I didn't even know were derogatory.
Redskin?
No, I don't think I'm.
So she goes, that's okay because I too have used terms that are derogatory. And he immediately goes to Redskin, right? Which we know now that a lot of colleges and universities, that was their mascot. And it's derogatory towards Native peoples. It represents something very violent and hateful. And okay, y'all can hate me if you want to, but I don't think I have ever in my 35 years of living heard anybody use that term like on a serious level. And I think I'm going to speculate as to why. Number one, because it's not like that's not the big race issue in the United States, right? That doesn't mean that it's not important, but that's not the big race issue in the United States. In the United States, the big race issue is Black versus white, right? That's the bigger issue. Then there's the whole immigrant issue from like Mexico, right? Like that's another race issue. So people are not really using that term a lot. And I thought it was interesting how he like assumed, I don't know, I didn't like it, you guys, I didn't like it. I didn't like how he assumed that that's what she was talking about. I actually think she was probably talking about more like LGBTQ slurs or like even the phrase like long time no see was like derogatory towards Asians at one point. I think there's a lot of things that, there's a lot of other like random terms that we use that have nothing to do with race in the sense, like they're not like the N word or, WB or RS. But I don't know. I didn't like the way he brought it up. And it was almost like he was fishing for something for her to be, it was almost like his ego couldn't handle that. And he was like embarrassed that she had called him out on that kind of. And he wanted to make sure that he could call her out too. And this is what I'm talking about, you guys, when I say this tit for tat kind of stuff and where they're not at the same level. Like he's not okay with actually being called out. This is my personal opinion. I'm feeling like he's not okay with being called out at all. So he's going to try and even the playing field.
Like, just be ready for someone to say something.
I think for me, like as a Black woman in America, we're like the butt of jokes a lot. So I've just developed a tough skin, and I'm just like, sometimes it's just funny. Sometimes it's funny.
Sure.
Sometimes it is offensive. I think it's just that we've been able to find so much humor within our pain.
Sure.
And I think that's like maybe a difference with us.
Growing up, what came from my elders and my mom, it's just, you don't say that. And you just don't do it because, I don't know, because it minimizes who you are. And then, making a joke out of the pain, I would say my cultural background has a very different approach.
It's just different.
And you know what's funny is like, he's like, well, you just don't do that. Okay, well, babe, you just don't say the N word then, right? But it's like, so he's not willing, it sounds like, so he's getting agitated at this point. He's getting agitated because she is explaining how in Black culture, right, wrong, or indifferent, in Black culture, we tend to just make jokes about things. And that's how we kind of circumvent the painful reality, right? Which is that being Black in the United States, particularly as a Black woman, we are the butt of a lot of jokes. We are, look at comedians. They dress up and they make a caricature of Black people. Look at TikTok. People put on their Black voice. They put on their Black scent, and they're making money off the perceived flaws of Black women oftentimes. The Shaniqua and all that stuff, that's all the black women particularly are the butt of a lot of jokes. And so we don't have a lot of power to change that. And so a lot of times black people they use humor to just to deal with it. And so one of the rationales for using the N word is that for black people is that, okay, well, we're turning it into something empowering. And he's saying, well, we don't do that in my culture with RS, the word RS. And okay, that's okay that y'all wanted to do that. That is totally fine. But just understand that there are two different views. But he's getting agitated at this point. So let's listen.
I guess. I think it's just different.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What do you think the difference is?
Like, yes, we are minorities, but we came from two totally different backgrounds. Sure. Our cultures are different. Mm-hmm. Our cultures, the way we came about in this country is very different. Like, you all were here. We were brought here against our will. And so I feel like there's just like those subtle differences in our culture.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is it uncomfortable?
Huh?
Is this conversation uncomfortable for you?
No,
No,
it's not.
So he's shifting as she's kind of saying this because we're about to go into what I call the victim Olympics. And people don't like to admit this, but being Black in America is very different than being any other race because there is baggage that comes with being Black. At the end of the day, if your skin is not Black, you are not perceived the same way. So it's so like people who are not Black do not like this. They do not like this, especially non-minorities. They do not like this, but y'all be offended, argue with your dirty draws, do not argue with me. We are not the same. We are not the same. People look at Black people very differently than they do at people who are Mexican, Asian, India, East Asian, I guess, Native peoples. They look at them very differently. Heck, they even look at Africans, people who are born in Africa, differently than Black Americans. And if you watch this on the scene, he's getting uncomfortable, but it's the truth. Now, that doesn't lessen his pain. That doesn't lessen the atrocities that were committed against Native peoples. That doesn't diminish it. But we've got to get to a point where we acknowledge that it's not the same. You walk into a room and there's a Mexican woman and there's a Black woman, or there's an El Salvadorian woman and a Black woman, there's a white woman and a Black woman. The reactions are going to be very different. The level of grace is going to be very different. And people who are not Black don't like to admit this. Argue with your dirty draws. Do not argue with me. Doesn't mean that they don't experience persecution and that they don't experience racism. But it's very different and it's rooted very differently than Black people because there was a subjugation factor that was not and an integration factor. Our country almost went to war over our skin color, right? Our country almost split up because of our skin color. That is not the case for any other race. And so our experience is different. Our culture was ripped from us. We don't have a language. We don't have traditions and things like that, whereas other cultures still do. So we're in a very peculiar situation. And that's not to say that I'm more victimized than you, or it's just a different experience. And what Orion is struggling with is that difference. And I think that goes back to the battle. Like he's like, let this woman live. Now, this is where it gets kind of, yikes, which I wouldn't have done this, but she does.
Yeah.
I'm actually glad we had this talk. I'm glad. I don't know how you feel, but
I'm a little heated.
I'm not heated, but I do find some difference in how you handled me, a Black woman, and how you handled a joke from a white man. I do find a little difference in your demeanor with me, and your shoulders are tense. You're like clearly.
So okay, maybe I think they removed you guys. Because we didn't play it. I think they removed the scene. So let me tell you what happened. He says, "Oh, have you ever used the term like redskin?" And she goes, "No, I don't because to be honest, that's not something that people really use." But then she kind of chuckles because she looks up at him and he's burnt in his face. So he's got a little redness on his face. And she goes, "Oh, she like chuckles and says, 'Oh, I see where the term came from.'" Which actually, it does not come from the color of your skin when you're sunburned. It actually comes from the scalp. So but he was offended because she chuckled at it. And that's where he was offended. So what happened was on the bus ride over to Cancun, to the resort, one of the other castmates says, okay, don't wander too far off the reservation. And what he meant to say was resort. And Orion just kind of like laughed it off. But when he's with Lauren, he is getting really offended and heated. And I can't help but agree with her. Like, she's never used that term in her life. Like, but you over here using all kinds of N words, and I'm sure you still do it. You just covered sage face on TV. And then when this white man was like, oh, don't wander too far off the reservation, you kind of said, oh, well, I can see ignorance, you know? So it's a little, it's giving, we don't respect Black women. It's giving, I need a reason to be mad at you. Should she have chuckled? Absolutely not. But then she got very serious and was like, listen, I'm never gonna, that's not a term that I ever want to use. That's not a term that I don't want to offend you. And he starts puffing up his chest and getting upset at her. And it's like, okay, there's a little bit of, I'm telling you guys, I spot insecurity from a mile away. I can see it. Ain't gonna work. And she needs to stop. She's giving desperate, and I don't like it. I don't like it. She's too pretty. She's too self-aware. She's too conscious. She's too successful to be begging somebody to treat her properly. I'm not about it. Don't love it.
In the bus, it was just like, oh, he's just ignorant.
Well, there's a difference between reservation and redskin.
That's also fair. That is also fair. But I think in this moment, I wasn't like calling you that. I think there needs to be some clarity here, though.
In what?
In what just happened, because you're still tense and you say you're heated.
Well, I mean, I'm like chilling.
Well, you say you're heated, but you say you're heated. So I'm like, well, why are you?
Because, there were, you started to make comparisons, and, the way I read that is you're trying to make what you said or what came up seem
less offensive than what it was.
It seemed like you tried to minimize.
So I can see why you think I'm trying to minimize, but I think I'm just trying to figure out what's okay to say in this relationship.
I would just stay away from it.
Or,
cracking jokes about each other's background and culture. I mean, I wouldn't deem that okay. I wouldn't do that to you.
And that's why okay. No, that's fair.
Right?
Yeah.
There is massive amount of pride, in who I am and where I come from.
And I see that, and I respect that.
I would never want you to feel heated in the way that I did because I said something I wasn't aware of.
Okay.
Would you agree with that?
So, and the way she just like backs down is really interesting, which good for her. Like, and I respect her a lot, because I think what I'm hearing, because he's like, you are comparing and all this other stuff. And she's just like, okay, this to me is 2 + 2 is 5. Fine. 2 + 2 is 5. Like, that's what which is really, really smart. It's good, high emotional intelligence, actually. 2 + 2 is 5. Fine. 2 + 2 is 5. I think Lauren needs to take notes on his response and how he views her and what she's allowed to say versus what he's allowed to say. There's still a lot for them to know about each other. I do think the producers created this moment, and I don't like it. Do race issues come up in interracial marriages? Of course. But I think the key thing is recognizing that we're not the same people, and that's okay. And we don't have to agree on every single thing. And I think, like, especially when it comes to race stuff, it's like, just let it be. Let it be. This is offensive to you. This is offensive to me. We are agreeing to respect each other. Move on. I didn't like this moment. I thought Married at First Sight was very messy for this. And I do think this was good because it brought out some insecurities in Orion, and it brought out, these are real things that can happen in a relationship with two minorities. Like, yeah, I don't know. It just made me uncomfortable. I didn't like it. I just didn't think that I didn't think it was a healthy dialogue, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. I do.
Okay, so that's the end of that. Yeah, I don't know about so my armchair diagnosis is that number one, I think the Married at First Sight producers created this drama. They wanted her to ask that question, and or I think that Lauren had but when you're a black woman and people tell you that, oh, if you date outside your race, the man's going to be racist, she had to ask that question. Um she felt called to make that to ask that question. Unfortunately, it led to this situation. I also think that Orion is feeling competitive. Like that was a very competitive response. And I think, yeah, I think he's in competition with her. And she needs to be careful because he seems like the type that would hold that over her head. And I think she should watch out. They're not going to make it because she's going to find herself doing that a lot. She's going to find herself being, he's going to pull a trump card and she's going to be like, okay, 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 as to not be offensive, as to not hurt his feelings. And she's going to find herself in a position a lot where she's having to say sorry and apologizing. And it's going to get old really quickly. And I think a lot of this, and this is not to minimize because I already said it a million times, I think her response to his offense was actually, I think she offended him. And how she responded to him by joking a little bit about the redskin thing was offensive. And I don't think she should have done that. And I also think he needed to show her a little bit more grace. And I also think that now this is something that he can hold over her head because there's if you watch his demeanor, there's pride there. There's a lot of pride, not in a good way, a lot of ego. And I think she's going to struggle with that. And I'm calling it out right now. I don't think they're going to make it. I think he is in competition with her because I think it takes a very healthy man to come into a situation with a strong woman who knows her value. Well, she doesn't know her value. I'm gonna talk about that in a different video, but who has her life together. And for you to come in, because he's essentially subjugated, right? He's going to be moving, like he doesn't have his own place. He doesn't have, she's well established. That's tough. And I think this is now starting to seep through. And if you're wise and like open to it, you can see that, yeah, they're gonna struggle. Anyway, you guys, I gotta go. I'm gonna go run some errands. I gotta go pick up my husband we want to do fish tacos tonight. So he was like, can you go get some mayonnaise for the fish taco sauce? Yes, baby, I'll go get some mayonnaise. That's how I make the fish taco sauce, by the way. I do, it's like sriracha, lemon, mayonnaise, and then we do like cabbage and like all this other stuff. So anyway, it's really good, the sauce. But anyway, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.